Hi, I'm Trish Connor-Cato. Welcome to the Microsoft Power Apps video course. This video is for users who are looking to gain skills in creating custom business apps without coding. These apps can range from viewing financial information, updating inventory levels, adding items to a SharePoint list, or any other business process you need. Users can be beginning level or those who have some experience but want to gain more. This course is geared toward app makers and creators, as well as app users. Power Apps is a suite of apps, services, and connectors, as well as a data platform that provides a rapid development environment to build custom apps for your business needs. Using Power Apps, you can quickly build custom apps that connect to your data stored either in the underlying platform known as Microsoft Dataverse, or in various online and on-premises data sources, for example, SharePoint, OneDrive, SQL Server, Dynamics 365, and more. Power Apps enables users to create feature-rich, custom apps, again, without having to write code. You can create apps from scratch or use the collection of templates available. In this video course, we'll start with the basics, learning the different user roles in Power Apps. We'll then move on to learning about the different types of apps, Canvas, model-driven, and portal apps. Although this course focuses mostly on Canvas apps, you'll gain some hands-on experience in creating a model-driven app later in the course. To get started, we'll dive into hands-on by creating a new Canvas app from scratch that will be used to review pertinent financial data. You will learn a lot of skills in this section, including the Power Apps interface, connecting to a data source, working with app screens, changing properties, saving an app, and playing an app. Then we'll move into creating an app from within SharePoint. The app will be used to populate a SharePoint list. Along the way, you'll learn how to work with Power Apps components, such as galleries, forms, screen controls, images, and formatting controls. We'll move on to how to access a Power App. It could be from a web browser, mobile app, so on and so forth, and how to share an app. At this point, we'll create a model-driven app and publish it, and we'll be doing that from scratch. We'll end this video course with a bonus section in which you will learn how to add Power BI to a Power App. Hi, this is Trish Connor-Cato. Welcome to Microsoft Power Apps. Before we get hands-on in Power Apps, we're going to go over some basic information that will lay the foundation for the rest of this course. To get started, we want to talk about what exactly is Microsoft Power Apps. Well, Power Apps is many things. It's a suite of what are known as apps, services, and connectors, as well as a data platform. It's a rapid development environment and allows you to build custom apps for your business needs without having to code. You can quickly build business apps that connect to your data, stored either in the underlying data platform, which is Microsoft Dataverse, and you'll get experience with Microsoft Dataverse during this course, or in various online and on-premises data sources. Common ones are SharePoint, Microsoft 365, SQL Server, OneDrive, so on and so forth. These apps that you build provide rich business logic and workflow capabilities to transform your manual business operations into digital automated processes. What's more, apps built using Power Apps have a responsive design and can run seamlessly in browsers and on mobile devices, such as phones and tablets. You're able to create feature-rich, custom business apps, again, without writing code when you're using Power Apps. Now, who uses Power Apps? Well, there are a couple of groups that use Power Apps. This course is geared toward app makers and creators, as well as app users. So, if you're an app maker or a creator, you can create 3 types of apps, and we'll go into detail about what those 3 types are, but they're known as Canvas apps, model-driven apps, and portal apps. Power Apps Studio is the app designer you're going to use when we're building Canvas apps. It's almost like building a slide deck in PowerPoint, but it's kind of different. The app designer is for model-driven apps, and you would have to set up a sitemap and add components to build a model-driven app, and you'll learn how to do that later in this course. And then the Power Apps Portal Studio is a WYSIWYG, what you see is what you get, design tool to add and configure web pages, components, forms, and lists. Portal apps is known as preview mode right now. We will not be covering them during this course. The other people who use Power Apps are app users. You can run the apps that you create or that someone else created and shared with you. You can run them in a browser or on mobile devices. And you'll learn how to do that during this course. The other group of people that's not on the slides that use Power Apps are admins and developers. So we're not covering any administrative or development in this course at all. Let's do a little bit of a deeper dive into the types of apps that you can create in Power Apps. So Canvas apps, they allow you to craft a highly tailored interface with the power of a blank canvas, and you connect it to your choice of more than 200 data sources. You can build Canvas apps for web, mobile, and tablet applications. They give you the flexibility to arrange the user experience and interface the way you want it. They allow your creativity and business sense to guide how you want your apps to look and feel. Then we have model-driven apps, and we'll get to model-driven apps later in the course. We're going to start and spend quite a bit of time on Canvas apps initially. But model-driven apps start with your data model. It builds up from the shape of your core business data and processes in the Dataverse to model forms, views, and other components. Model-driven apps automatically generate great user interfaces that's responsive across devices. When you create a model-driven app, you can use all the power of the Dataverse to rapidly configure your forms, business rules, and process flows. Again, we're not going to be covering portal apps here, but what they do for you is you use them to create external-facing websites that allow users outside your organization to sign in with a wide variety of identities, create and view data in the Dataverse, or even browse content anonymously. And let's talk a little bit about the Dataverse. That is the underlying data platform supporting Power Apps. It allows you to store and model business data. If you're a Dynamics 365 customer, your data is already in Dataverse. It allows you to securely store and manage your data within a set of standard and custom tables, and you can add columns to those tables when you need them. You'll get some experience with Dataverse tables during this course. The basics is that data is stored in a data source, and you bring that data into your app by creating a connection. The connection uses a specific connector to talk to the data source. So for example, if you're using OneDrive for Business, if that is where your data source is stored, you would use the OneDrive for Business connector in order to talk to your data. So Power Apps has connectors for many popular services and on-premises data sources, including the usuals. You also have stuff like Salesforce, Twitter, Yammer is another thing that you can connect to. And a connector may provide tables of data or actions. Some connectors provide only tables, some provide only actions, and some provide both. Also, your connector may be either a standard or a custom connector, as you'll see as we go through the course. If your connector provides tables, you add your data source and then select the table in the data source that you want to manage. Power Apps will both retrieve table data into your app and update the data in your data source for you if you're actually allowed to edit the data from your app. If you go to the original data source and you edit the data, the changes will show in the app. If your connector provides actions, you add your data source and manually connect a control to an action by editing the items property of that control that will show your data. It talks about here the formula for the items property. This slideshow is also a file that's in the video description below, so you can review it at your leisure. Lesson 2, Part 1 is where we start getting hands-on by creating a new Power App. We're going to start with creating a new Canvas app from scratch. During this lesson, you will learn the basics of app creation, including launching Power Apps and reviewing its interface. And the app we'll be creating will allow us to view financial information. You will become acclimated to the Canvas app interface as we connect to a data source stored on OneDrive for Business. We're going to explore galleries, learn how to format controls on an app, and how to program screen controls for navigation. Now, we're going to be using the financial sample Excel file that's in the video description. You're going to want to upload it to your OneDrive for Business account and have both your OneDrive for Business and Microsoft Home screens open in your browser. You can pause the video until you get that set up and then resume. We're going to start this lesson in the OneDrive folder where you uploaded the financial sample Excel file from the video description. It's a good idea to be acclimated to the data that's in the file before you start working with that data when you build an app. So we're going to just go ahead and launch Excel Online by clicking on financialsample.xlsx link. A few things I'd like to point out about the data in this file. This file you can find anywhere on the internet. It's just financial information, sample financial information. Has a whole bunch of columns, segments, countries, the products, so on and so forth. If you scroll to the right, you can see all the additional columns, sales, cost of goods sold. Notice that they have the date, and then it's broken out by month number, month name, and year. And this data is in the form of a table. Just a note, if you're bringing data into Power Apps and it's from Excel, make sure it's in the form of an Excel table. So this data, if I look up at the ribbon, I have the Table Design tab on the ribbon. This data has been converted into the Excel table format, and the name of the table is Financials. We have two other tabs in here, Country Sales. Country Sales is a pivot table. You can't bring in a pivot table from Excel Online into Power Apps. So I've made a table out of the pivot table, just another regular Excel table, and this table is named Country Sales. If any info in the pivot table updates, which would be an update from the source data, then this country sales table will also update. And the last tab is country segments units, another pivot table. On this sheet, you might have to scroll down a little bit to see it, but there's also another Excel table. And this table, if I look at the table design tab of the ribbon, is called country and segment. So it's the units sold for every country per the segments in that country. We can go ahead and close Excel Online. And I've navigated to the Office home screen. So we're going to use the app launcher in the upper left-hand corner to get to Power Apps. And you should see Power Apps in the list of applications that you have access to. If you're not seeing it in this list right here, what you can do is you can go down here and click on All Apps to expand, and you'll probably find it there. Whichever way you look for it, when you find it, you're going to go ahead and just click on it to launch it. When you launch Power Apps, you're on its home screen as indicated from the navigation area on the left side. You'll notice the purple bar in front of home that lets you know what screen you're on at any given point in time. Now, that navigation area can be collapsed if you want just more space on your screen, and you can collapse it by using the 3 lines in its upper left-hand corner. When you collapse it, you'll still see the icons, you just won't see the text, and you can expand it by using those same 3 lines. Now, we will touch on some of these different screens in Power Apps as we go through this course, but for right now, we're going to get started just by reviewing what you can do from the home screen. So, from the home screen, you can start an app. You can start an app from a data source, for example, SharePoint, Dataverse, or other data sources. Again, there are over 200 data sources that you can connect to for your apps in Power App. You have a make your own app section where you can create apps from blank. The 3 different types of apps are listed there, and the from blank is listed there. If you continue to scroll down, you'll see a link on the right-hand side of the screen, and it points to all templates. Now, you do not have to start your apps from scratch in Power Apps. There's a host of templates that are available for you to use in order to start your apps. The next section down is learning for every level. That seems to be my job today while I'm recording this video. And as I continue to scroll down, I'll run into my apps. It's called your app section. And if you have more apps than exceed that screen space, you can click on the all apps link that's at the very bottom of your screen. We're going to go back up, scroll back up, until we get to the Make Your Own App section, and we're going to click on Canvas App from Blank. Now, all apps have to be named as indicated by the red asterisk next to app name, and we're going to name this Financials App. Now, you can always use and view apps from your internet browser, or you can view them from tablets and phones. So the format here on the Canvas App from Blank screen only involves whether you need it formatted for a tablet. If you have people out in the field that are going to be accessing the information via a tablet, that would be your choice. Or if they're going to be accessing information from a phone, that could be your choice. We're going to leave it on tablet, and we're going to click the Create button in the lower right-hand corner. So it says that it's getting things ready. You'll get your Welcome to Power Apps Studio splash screen that pops up. Remember, Power Apps Studio is where you create your Canvas apps. And if you take a look up here at the title bar, it lets you know that it's a Canvas app, Power Apps, and then Canvas. Now, this splash screen, you don't have to have it show. If you don't want it to show, you can check Don't Show Me This Again. You can skip it if you like, but I like to use the efficiency feature on it. So as opposed to, for our app, we have 2 choices here. We can create a form or create a gallery. We're going to create a gallery. A form typically shows 1 record at a time, and a gallery can show multiple records from a data source, and each record can contain multiple types of data. So since we want to create a gallery, we'll use the efficiency feature of the splash screen and go ahead and click Create a Gallery. Now, we will go over the Power Apps Studio interface shortly, but for right now, I just want to point out one thing. You're looking at what's called tree view. So you're seeing the screens. You have your app. On your app, so far you have 1 screen. Its default name is Screen 1. And that screen contains a gallery whose default name is Gallery 1. And we'll revisit all of the different views and how to navigate and the entire interface in just a little while. What I want to focus in on right now is the Select a Data Source pop-up. that happens. So right here, this is your canvas, right? The item that has the border around it is the gallery. It's filled with default data right now, just placeholder text basically. So this is how we have to connect to our Excel file that we stored in OneDrive through select a data source. So what it shows is tables. And under tables, it has current environment. Now, all of these are tables that are in Microsoft Dataverse, which is the underlying data platform. If I wanted to see more Dataverse tables, I could from this link. I'm going to just collapse tables. We're not working with Dataverse data at this moment. And we're going to expand connectors. Again, you have over 200 different data sources that you can connect to. And as you scroll through this list, you'll see everything from Power BI, Project Online, OneDrive, Teams, Mail, all kinds of connectors. The connector that we want to use is Excel Online Business. Even though we stored it in a OneDrive folder, it's still an Excel Online file that we're trying to access. So you're going to go ahead and click the Excel Online Business connector. When you select that connector, it will show Excel Online Business and your email address. I have my email address blocked for privacy purposes, but you're going to go ahead and click on Excel Online Business again. The Choose a Location panel opens on the right now, and it will show all of the organizational groups that you're a member of. I've blocked mine again for privacy reasons. The one that I'm looking for is unblocked, and it is OneDrive for Business. So you're going to go ahead and click on that. That's where that Excel file resides. Now you're going to navigate your way to the OneDrive folder that you need to get to. So in my case, I have it in a folder called Power Apps. And there is the file. So I'm going to just click on Financial Sample. So the next thing that pops up is choose a table. That file has 3 tables in it. They're all listed here. We're going to select all of them. So just do a check mark in front of each table. And at the bottom, you're going to click on the purple Connect button. So now, because they're tables, it's looking for an identifier. An identifier, also known as a key column or unique identifier, primary key in database language, is a field in a table that makes each record unique. So in our country sales table, we only have the countries listed once, each country listed once, and we have their total sales amount. So each country is only listed once. We could use a unique column from that table. So I'm going to go ahead and do that option button for Use Unique Column from Excel Table. I'm going to do the drop down arrow and I'm going to click on Country. At the bottom, I'm going to connect. So it's asking for an identifier, same thing for country segment units. Now this seems to be a little bit of a glitch. If I try to use a unique name, it won't let me access the drop down arrow. If I do the option button in front of Insert Auto Generated, and then come back to the option button in front of Use Unique Column, it will let me access the drop down, and I'm going to select country there as well. And connect at the bottom. Now, one more, this is for the financials table. Now, the financials table is a little bit different. It doesn't have a unique identifier. The countries repeat in there. All of the information basically repeats in that master table. So we're going to have it insert an auto-generated ID into the Excel table for that particular one. And we're going to do connect. You'll see what that auto-generated ID looks like later on. So once you've connected, you'll see after a moment that your gallery will populate. Before we continue working on our app, it's a good idea for you to get comfortable with the environment that you're working in right now. So I'm just going to go over what we're looking at in the studio. So I mentioned earlier that you have a title bar at the top. It lets you know that you're in Power Apps and that you're working in the Canvas studio. You can tell that you're working in a Canvas app as opposed to model driven or a portal app. You also have your Microsoft Apps Launcher to the left of that, so you can navigate to other Microsoft apps from within Power Apps. To the right of the title bar, you have the environment you're working in. I have mine blocked for privacy. And underneath the title bar, you have a little bit of like ribbon tabs. So if I click the back button, it will let me know that I have unsaved changes and prompt me to save my progress. I'm going to just go ahead and cancel that. I have a File tab that I can click on. Go ahead and click on File. And when you do so, it defaults to the Save As tab. So you could save your app to the cloud or to your computer. It gives you the name of the app over here, as well as the environment that you're saving it to. And it has a listing of other apps that you've accessed. You can start a new app from in here. You can open an existing app. You can get to your account information, settings. You can even close out of whatever app you're in from this menu. We're going to do the back button to get back to our studio. And let's take a look at our Home tab. So basically from the Home tab is where you do a lot of your font choices and formatting. You can also reorder and align and group the objects that you put on your different screens in here from the Home tab. It's a Microsoft program, so there's multiple ways of doing the same thing. The Insert tab, which is where it defaulted to when we came in here, gives you the ability to insert more objects onto your screens or into your gallery in our example here. You also have a View tab on the ribbon where you could get to manage your data sources, get to some media, so on and so forth. You have an Action tab, and you'll be able to see this, good use of this tab later on in the course. And you have a Settings tab. Now, when you click on the Settings tab, it actually opens up a dialog box where you have your general settings, the name of your app. You can give it a description. You can add an image for an app icon if you'd like here. Give it a fill color. There are some other settings in here that might be of interest. It's automatically going to save your changes every 2 minutes at the browser level. It has a data row limit here, so on and so forth. I strongly encourage you to get comfortable with the settings in here if you're going to be using Power Apps. You also have display settings there where you can set your screen size and orientation. Upcoming features is interesting because they have 3 different categories. They have features that are in preview, and it's telling you these features will be turned on for all apps soon. While they're in preview mode, you can test these features and report any problems with them. And there's a listing there of those preview features. You also have experimental features, and these features might change, break, or disappear at any time. You can turn them on and check them out if you like, but you've been warned that they may not work as expected. And then you have a retired category of features that are features that are going to be replaced or removed soon. So these are a host of features that are retiring very soon. And then the last tab on the left is your Support tab. Go ahead and click on that. On the Support tab, it again lets you know what environment you're currently working in, gives you your authoring version of Power Apps, the session ID for the current session that you're in, and then a host of helpful links where you can get support support, get into the community, the Power Apps community, where I often find a lot of good information. There's also documentation link there as well. And we can close the settings screen. So to the right of all these tabs, you'll see the name of your app. You'll also see the app checker. Kind of looks like a stethoscope. So if your app is having any issues, there'll be a red circle on that stethoscope alerting you to the issue. And you'd be able to click there and trace it to see what's going on and hopefully get some insight on how to fix the issue. You have your undo and redo buttons to the right of that. Your play your app, so preview the app, or F5 is the shortcut key for that. You can also share your app with other users from here. And you have the learn ? So you can get documentation support, quick tips, and more from there. Underneath this ribbon menu interface, you have a formula bar, very similar to in Excel. You also have a list, a property list that you can get to. So right now our gallery is selected, and these are properties that can be changed for items in the gallery. There's other ways of getting to that as well. So I mentioned earlier that we're in tree view, where it's showing that we have an app, we have our screen one, and we have gallery one. And if you hover over app, you'll see more options ellipsis button, where I can do a couple of things: navigate to the start screen, run on start. You have that more options button to the left of all of the components that would be listed there. So if I go to it for the screen, I can say duplicate the screen. Maybe I want another screen that's going to be almost exactly the same as this screen, right? I can rename the screen. And when I get to the gallery, I also have that more options button where I can cut, copy, do all of these things that are showing from that shortcut menu. Plus, I can expand the gallery. If I click the right pointing arrow in front of it, it shows me that right now the gallery has 5 different objects in it. And the cool thing is, if I want to select those objects, I can just select them there. So if I click on separator 1, it selects the separator line between the items in the gallery. Next arrow will select that right pointing arrow. Subtitle 1 selects the sales amount. Title 1 selects the country. And image 1 selects that blank image that came with the gallery. And all of those items also have more actions, so you should check them out when you have a chance. I'm going to just click on gallery again to select the entire gallery at this point. Now you have other views that are available, so I'm going to go ahead and expand the navigation pane. I have insert view, which you can click on insert. And so these are things that I can insert into my app. So maybe a date picker or a button. You have different categories here, and some of these things can be done from the insert tab up on the ribbon part of the screen as well. If you click on data, it will show the data source tables that you are connected to. Their source, which is Excel Online Business, as well as your email address. So these are just the ones that we're using in this particular app. You also have a media tab on the left. And this allows you to upload image, video, and audio files to use in your app. It gives you some information down at the bottom. Upload media files no larger than 64 megabyte, and you have 200 megabytes that you can use. So it lets you know, and that may change. That number may change depending on your organization and the environment that you're in. And then also on the left, you have advanced tools where you can monitor activity within your app and write tests to validate that your app is working as expected. We're going to go back to tree view, and we're going to collapse that navigation pane. Since our gallery is selected, on the right side of the screen, we have the Properties pane. Notice at the top it's saying Gallery, Gallery 1, right? If I click on Screen 1 in Tree View, then the Properties pane updates to the properties for Screen 1. You want to be careful of what you're on when you go in and change properties. So make sure you click on Gallery 1 again, and you could collapse Gallery 1 if you like, so that we're looking at the properties for Gallery 1. And when we complete our tour, we're going to be working with the properties for the gallery. So our tour is almost done of the studio here. At the bottom, I see I have a tab for Screen 1, and if I click on that, it selects the screen and the Gallery 1 tab disappears. But if I select Gallery 1, then I'll have a tab for both of them at the bottom. I also have my zoom slider, so if I want to zoom in and see things better, I can do that. You'll see some other features when we start working with properties in just a moment. Now that we've had an overview of the studio environment, we're going to go ahead and start working with some properties for our gallery. And that's Properties pane is over on the right side of your screen. If your gallery is selected, it will say Gallery 1 at the top. If we start looking at the properties, it lists the data source as country sales. That's the first table from our data source, our Excel file, that is in alphabetical order. So it defaults to the first one alphabetically. Underneath data source, you have fields and there's an edit button. We'll come back and look at that in a moment. But we want to focus on the layout down here. So the layout, the default layout here, is for image, title, and subtitle. And we're not going to be using an image, so we're going to change the layout. We're going to go to the drop down where it says image, title, and subtitle. And notice it's showing at the top that it's showing all the different layouts, whether they're for a list or, if you scroll down, for a gallery. Even though this is a gallery, we want to use a list layout. Doesn't matter in terms of layout, whether it's a list or a gallery one. The one that we want to use is just going to say title and subtitle. So now it's still showing in the gallery multiple records, and it's showing the title and the subtitle. Got rid of that little image placeholder. So that's one thing that we can do using properties. Now, another thing, if you click next to fields, if you click on that edit link, you'll see now in the data pop-up that it's showing, and these are the object names in this app. Title 4 is country. And if you do the drop down there, you'll see there's only two fields, country, and the subtitle is sales is what we want. So we can just close data. And so we've impacted our app at this point. Now, the other thing we can do at this point, just to see what it looks like, is we can preview our app. Again, the preview button is up here to the right, or you could use F5 as the shortcut key. I'm going to go ahead and click preview the app. And this is what it would look like if I were to run it in a browser, right? And these buttons, the next buttons, if I hover over it, it says there's a tooltip that says view item details. If I click on it, absolutely nothing happens. And that I will end with yet, because we need to tell that button what to do. And we'll do that a little bit later on. So I'm going to close the preview. It has an X in the upper right-hand corner, or you can press escape to close it. And we're back into our studio screen. We're going to end up adding a new screen to our app. Right now, we only have one screen and it has the gallery on it. So before we do that, let's rename Screen 1 to Home Screen and Gallery 1 to Country Sales. So I'm hovering over Screen 1 in Tree View. I'm going to go to the More Actions ellipsis and select Rename. And I'm just going to type Home Screen. Then I'm going to hover over Gallery 1 go to its More Actions ellipsis, rename, and we're going to call that Country Sales. Now, it zoomed in a lot on my app, so I'm going to just zoom it back to a tolerable level when I did that. So now we have our home screen, which includes the country sales gallery. And notice the different icons. The app has like those 3 boxes. A screen has a rectangle, and a gallery has multicolored set of 4 boxes. You'll get used to the icons as you're working in Power Apps. Now we're ready to add a new screen to our app to show different information from another table that we pulled in from that Excel file. So if you go to the Insert tab up top, the first icon is New Screen, and you're going to select it and do the drop down. You have different templates here for screens: blank, scrollable, list, success, all different kinds. We're going to use a list. So now a couple of things. If you look in Tree View, you'll see that in addition to your home screen with the country sales gallery on it, you have an additional screen that it temporarily named Screen 1. If we hadn't renamed home screen, this would be Screen 2, so on and so forth. And on Screen 1, because of the type of new screen that we chose, it gives us a template gallery list, as you can see. And that contains separators, next arrows, all of that kind of stuff. Also gives you a title. And again, if you click on it in Tree View, it will select it on the screen. So it gave that screen a title. And the quick action bar too is the same as the title. It's overlaying the title there. So we have a new screen, Screen 1, and we should go ahead and rename that. So we're going to go to More Actions, Rename, and we're going to just call it Details. So Screen 1 is now Details. And we're going to rename Template Gallery List 2 to Country Segment Units. I keep accidentally clicking my screen so it zooms. So now we have, in our tree view, we have a home screen with the country sales gallery, and we have a detail screen with the country segment units list gallery. With country segment units selected, in your properties panel, you're going to do the drop down for data source and select the country segment units table. Once that's done, you'll see the screen starts to populate. And right now, if you look at the properties window, right, it's set for that default layout, image, title, and subtitle. If we go to the edit button to the right of fields, go ahead and click on edit. You'll see that it's using country as the title, segment as the subtitle, and that sample image. We're going to close that data screen. We're going to go to the layout dropdown, and we're going to use title, subtitle, and body this time under list. Now we're going to go back to the edit link next to fields, and we'll see that it defaulted. The title is country, subtitle is segment, and then the unit sold is in the body. And we're going to close the data window again. Even though we saw earlier in settings that it saves automatically after every 2 minutes, this would be a good time for us to save our app, the progress we've made so far. So we're going to go ahead and click on File, and you'll see that it defaults to the Save As tab. It also defaults to saving it to the cloud in Power Apps. Your other choice would be to save a copy to your computer. You can change the name of the app up here if necessary. We're good with Financials app. It lets you know what environment it's going to be saved in. And in the lower right corner, you're going to click on the purple Save button. Once it is done saving to Power Apps, you'll get this screen where it lets you know that it's saved into the environment, the date and time it was saved, that all changes are saved, and from here you could share or see all versions. What we want to do is use the back button to get back into the studio. And let's preview our new screen. So notice in Tree View, I'm on the gallery, country segment units, and that's fine. I could be on detail screen, but I'm going to go up and I'm going to preview the app. And we can see it has a scroll bar on the right. You can use your mouse roller to scroll as well. So it starts with the first company, then the first segment, and then their total units sold. You get to the end of Canada, you'll see Canada's total, and then it goes to the next country, so on and so forth. You also have that right pointing arrow. If you hover over it, it says View Item Details, just like it did on the other screen. That is the tooltip. And if you click the arrow, nothing will happen because we have to tell it what to do when it's clicked. Let's close the preview. Now we're ready to do some formatting properties for our screens and the objects on them. So in Tree View, let's go ahead and navigate to the home screen. And you'll notice the property panel on the right now says home screen at the top since that's what's selected. If I wanted to rename it, I can rename it from here as well. It only has a few properties here: the fill color, background image, and the image position. We're going to give this screen a fill color. So I'm going to go to the paint bucket and click on it. And under theme colors, I'm going to pick the third one in the second column. And it gives the screen a little bit more visual interest. I'm going to click away from that. And I'm going to use the same color on the detail screen. So I'm going to select it first in Tree View and then go to the paint bucket drop down and select the third color in the second row. Now, on this detail screen, it actually comes with a title. And that title is where it says App Name. If I hover over App Name, it tells me to double click to edit the text. So I'm going to double click there on App Name. And when I do that, the Properties pane changes to Title 3, right? And I have the app name selected. So when I type in there, it's going to change the text in the Properties pane as well. Or I could just change it in the Properties pane if I wanted to. So there's, just like any other Microsoft program, multiple ways of doing the same thing. We're going to call this country, comma, segment, comma, and units. And I can click away from that. When I click back on it, you'll see in the Properties pane that it updated the text property. The other thing we decide is we're comfortable with the font and the font size, but we want the font weight to be bold. So I'm going to do the drop down in the Properties pane and select bold for font weight. And you can see it automatically adjust in that title. And now we're going to put a title on our home screen as well. So using Tree View, I'm going to navigate back to the home screen. And before we do that, click on your country sales gallery. And if you look at the Properties pane, notice the position. It's X and Y, and they're both set to 40. Now, a lot of people don't know what numbers to use for a position. And it's not stuff you carry around in your head typically. So what I'm going to do is I want to move this gallery to the center of the screen. And I'm just putting my mouse on the border of it so it looks like a four-headed arrow. And I'm going to just visually move it so it looks like it's in the center of the screen. And I'm going to drag it down so there's actually more room at the top than there is at the bottom. And notice in your properties pane that the position updated to the appropriate X and Y numbers. The X number is the horizontal position and the Y number is the vertical position. So now that that's done, we're ready to add our title to this screen. So making sure home screen is selected, I'm going to go up to the Insert tab at the top, and the second icon is Label. So it gives me a label control on the home screen. Default name label 3. And what we're going to do is I'm going to resize that label. I'm going to put my mouse on the bottom right sizing circle so it looks like a diagonal arrow. And I'm going to just drag it to the right until it fills the entire screen. I might have to do a little bit of resizing on the left as well. So it fills the width of the screen. And I want to move it so it's at the very top of the screen. Its top border should align with the edge of the screen. Now we can do this from the Properties pane. In the text box in the Properties pane, you're going to select the word text. And you're going to type in total sales by country. And then you're going to change the font size to 18. And as you click away from those fields, then you'll see the change take place. So I'm going to go to font weight and make it bold. My size didn't take. Let me go back in there and press enter after 18. There we go. And now I've made it bold. And so what we can do next is we want to center align it. So under text alignment, I'm going to choose align center icon. And we're going to change the color of this label as well, so it mimics the color on our other screen. So we're going to scroll down in the Properties pane until we see the color property. Now there's two color properties. There's the first one is for your font color, and the paint bucket one is your fill. Let's go to the fill color first. And we're going to change the fill. I'm going to select the fifth one in the second column under theme colors. And then I'm going to click on the font one. You can kind of grab it with your mouse if you can. Click on the font color one. And I'm going to change the font color to white. Since we have the darker background, it can support a white font. And I think it looks pretty similar to the one on the other screen. So you can compare now from your label 3 to title 3, and it looks just about the same coloration, same height. Let me look at title 3 again and see what its height is, because it looks like ours is a little bit smaller in terms of height. So we want 64 height. I'm going to go back to label 3 and change the height to 64 and press enter. So now they're pretty much the same. This app is almost done. We just need to deal with the next arrows on both the home screen and the detail screen. So I'm going to start by going to the home screen and opening the country sales gallery just to expand it. And I'm going to click on next arrow too. So a couple of things in the properties pane I want you to see. You can see that the icon, the position, the type of icon to display is a right arrow, right? You can do the drop down there. There's a whole bunch of other icons that you could use, but we're going to leave it on right arrow. And we want to scroll all the way down in the properties pane until we see the tooltip. That's what we see when we're in preview mode, when we hover over the right arrow. So since we named our next screen, our new screen, the detail screen, let's change that to that tooltip to just get rid of the word item and just say view details and click away from it. Now we need to tell it to go to the details screen when it's clicked. And we do that from the Action tab up top. On the Action tab, and you still have your next arrow 2 selected, on the Action tab, the first icon is Navigate, and you're going to do the drop down. And you'll see that it says it's going to go to the other screen, the detail screen. When you have multiple screens, they show in the drop down. Well, this is the home screen, and when someone is looking at that in the app and they want to use the next arrow, it will take them to the detail screen. And you have some different transitions that you can choose there. I'm going to leave it on screen transition fade, and I'm going to click away from it. Now select next arrow 2 again from your home screen. And now when you look at the area underneath all the icons, it has the on select property. So when that right arrow is selected, when it's clicked on, if you look in the formula bar, it will say navigate, then the name of the screen, comma, and the name of the transition. You'll also notice that the bottom tab is for next arrow 2. So now we're going to test this. And we'll do that by previewing the app. So I'm going to just press F5, function key 5 this time, the shortcut key. Takes me into preview mode. When I hover over the next arrow, it now says view details. I click on it, and now it goes to the details screen. While we're in preview mode, let's hover over that arrow. So that arrow is not going to do anything, and when you hover over it, it still has the default tooltip of view item details. We're going to exit preview, and then we're going to go and fix the arrow on the details screen. So I'm going to, on the details screen in preview, I'm going to open up the list, expand the list, and it's next arrow 4 in here, so I'm going to select it. I could have clicked on it on the grid to select it too, but sometimes it's easier to grab it from tree view. There's no right or wrong here. It's whatever's most comfortable for you. We're going to go to the same steps here. So on the Action tab, we're going to go to the Navigate drop down. And it already is defaulting to the other screen, the home screen with the standard fade. So we're not going to have to do anything there. We just want to change the tooltip. So I'm going to make sure that arrow is selected. And in the Properties pane on the right, I'm going to go down to the tooltip and just change it from View Item Details to View Home Screen and press Enter. Now I'm going to F5 to test both of them out again. So now I'm on the details screen. When I hover over the next arrow, it says View Home Screen. When I click it, it takes me back to the home screen. And again, when I'm on the home screen, I can hover and view details and click, and it takes me back to the detail screen. I'm going to exit preview at this time. I should have mentioned after we saved our app that now it updates up here. It has the name of the app and that it's saved, and in parentheses, it's unpublished at this point. You'll learn about publishing and sharing apps later in the course. Now I challenge you, go back to the File tab and save your app again. This time when you went to File, it was on the Save tab, and once you save, you'll get the green check mark with all changes are saved, the date and time that it was saved. You'll now have a Publish button and see all versions. We'll get to publishing and sharing later in the course, and we'll revisit the screen and see what you can do when you go to see all versions a little bit later as well. For right now, we're going to do our back arrow. Now, if we were done working in Power Apps and we wanted to close our app that we're working in, we could just close the browser tab that it's on. But if you're going to continue to do work in Power Apps, or you're going to want to access your app later in the day, you don't want to close the browser tab. What you're going to want to do is go back to the File menu. And all the way at the bottom left, you'll see the Close command. Go ahead and close your app. So it closes your app and it brings you back to the Power Apps interface, and you're on the Apps tab. If you look at your navigation panel on the left, it's listing all the apps that you have access to. So if we wanted to get back into the studio to edit the app, we would have to use its More Commands button, the ellipsis on the right-hand side of it. And then you would choose Edit, and that will launch it back into Canvas just like we've been working in it. If you want to play the app, you could either click the app name, which is a link to playing it, or you could use your More Commands menu. When you play your app, this is the same experience that users of your app will have if they're using the app on the internet. So we can see our coloration, our titles came through, our buttons, our next buttons should be working, and it's operating as it should be operating. So this is for users that's going to access it in web view. And so you can scroll down on your country segment and unit screen to see different countries and so on and so forth. We're going to leave this browser tab open and switch back to our Power Apps browser tab. Now that you're back on your list of apps, I'm going to challenge you to open your Financials app within the Canvas Studio again, and then close it again. I've navigated back to the browser tab where we played the app, and I'm going to make sure that I am on the home screen here, so total sales by country screen. And I just want you to take note, and I've written it down so you don't have to memorize it, but the total of our data for Canada, the total sales for Canada is $24,915,284 and change. So we're going to go to our OneDrive for Business account where that Excel financial sample file resides, and open that file in OneDrive for Business. We're going to make a change in the file, and then we'll come back here and see that the change is reflected in our app. So I have the financial sample file open in Excel Online, and we're in here because we want to make a dramatic change so that the Canada total sales value updates dramatically in our app. Before we do that, I want to show you one thing. So on the Financial Info tab, I'm going to scroll to the right, and you'll see that now there's a Power Apps ID column in column Q. When we connected to our data source, we said there was no unique identifier in this table of information, so nothing that makes every record, every row, a unique record. And we couldn't use year, for example, because the year repeats often in this table of data. So we had Power Apps give it a unique identifier, and that's what's in that column Q, the Power Apps ID. So even if it's the same year, month, country, so on and so forth, each row item, each record will have its own unique identifier. So that happened in the background while we were connecting to our data source. Now I'm going to scroll back over to the left. So I'm going to focus on column E here, the unit sold column. And so for the first record, it's for the country of Canada. We want to change that unit sold to a dramatically larger number. If we click on the gross sales for the first record in row 2, we'll see that it's the result of a formula. So it's the units sold times the sale price. If we update the units sold, then the gross sales and every other field that's dependent on it will also update as well. So I'm going to click on cell E2, that 3,000 for units sold. And I'm going to go up to the formula bar and click after 3,000. I'm going to make a dramatic change. So I'm going to just add 4 more zeros. So it's 3 million. And I'm going to press enter. And you'll see that your gross sales, you might have to adjust your column width to see it, but the gross sales column updated as well as a few other columns. I need to widen my cost of goods sold column now, column K, to see that change as well. So let's go to the country sales tab of the ribbon. Now, the pivot table on this sheet, as well as the one on the country segments units sheet, are based off of the data that's on the financial info sheet. So in order to get that change to show up in the pivot table, and I can actually collapse my field list a little bit over here. I don't need it to be this wide. Let me just do this. So when I refresh the pivot table to get the update, this subsequent table should also update. So just being anywhere in this pivot table, we're going to go to the pivot table tab of the ribbon. And the first icon is refresh. So I'm going to click. If we do the drop down, we'll see refresh all is at the top of the list. And then refresh is at the bottom of the list. So if I just wanted to refresh this pivot table, I would do the drop down and select refresh. Instead, I'm going to select the upper half of the button, which is refresh all. When you have a split button like that, whatever is the first thing on the drop down list will be what the top half of the button will perform. So I'm going to click the top half of the button, refresh all. You'll see that the sum for Canada updated here, and it also updated in this table. If I go to country segments units, you'll see the Canada total updated here as well, because we did refresh all. So it's going to refresh all the pivot tables in a workbook. So now that we made that change, we can close out of Excel or actually leave it open, because we'll come back in here and undo what we changed. And you want to go back over to your Internet tab that has the Power App that you've played on it. Because it's on a web page, it's stagnant. So you'll notice that Canada has not updated here. It's still the 24 million that it started at. So to refresh this internet page, I'm going to just press F5 on my keyboard. And it reloads the app. And you can see that the Canadian total has changed. So it's changed on this screen. And then it also changed for the government sector for Canada as well on the detail screen. So now that we're back here on our app, on the Play tab for our app, I'm going to challenge you. Go back into your financial sample Excel file that's stored on OneDrive. Change the units sold back to 3,000 for the first record in row 2. That would be in cell E2. Refresh both pivot tables, and then come back to your app on this screen, refresh the Internet tab so you can see it change back to the lower numbers. Your Canada numbers on both screens should mimic mine, so you're back to the 24 million for total sales by country. And on the detail screen, the government value is 99,000 and change. We can go ahead and close our Power Apps app tab and just be in our Power Apps application on the list of apps. Now we're going to go and revisit all the versions that are out there for our app. So in order to do that, we need to go back into the Canvas Studio. So from the More Actions button, I'm going to click on Edit. It's going to take a moment to load and get things ready. And when it's done with this process, you'll get that same splash screen that we used. Welcome to Power Apps Studio. And this time we can skip it. So now we're back into the studio where we created our app and made some modifications. So now we're going to make our way back to the File tab up top. And that's where we'll see the See All Versions button. Again, it comes back in here on the Save tab. So we're going to go ahead and click on See All Versions. The first thing I'm going to point out is that you have 5 different tabs in here. It defaults to the Versions tab. Let's start from left to right. So we're going to click on the Details tab. The Details screen tells you that you're the owner. It gives you the created and last modified date for your app. I've privacy blocked most of my web link. That's a live link that will take you to your app. You have the app ID and the license designation. Now we can go back to the Versions tab up top. So depending on how many times you saved, every time you save, you get a new version of your app. So I actually have 3 versions. If you don't have 3 versions, that's fine. What can you do with versions? Let's say you start out with version 1, you save it, then you make a bunch of changes to your app, you save that, and that creates version 2. You do the same thing over again on version 2, make more changes, save it, you have version 3. And then you decide the changes that you made for version 2 and version 3 you no longer want. You want to go back to the original version. Well, if you hover over version 1 and you go to its More Commands ellipsis, you can restore it back to previous versions, or you can delete versions that you know that you're not going to use. If you go to More Actions for version 3, your only choice for the current version is to publish it. And we're not quite ready to get to publishing apps. We're going to cover that in a later lesson. So these are the things that you can do from your version screen. Let's move on from left to right. Now we're ready to go to the connection screen. The Connections tab will list all of the connectors that you used in your app. In our app, we only used Excel Online Business, but if we had used multiple different connectors for data sources, they would all be listed here. If you want to, you can take a moment. If you click on the connector, it will give you some details about it. I'm going to move on to the Flows tab. And it just lets us know that there are no flows used in this app. So you can pair Power Automate with Power Apps for even more seamless automation in your business processes. And then the last tab that you have there is Analytics. And just to mention, anything you see that's in preview mode means it hasn't been fully released yet, and it may disappear at some times. I'm hearing that Analytics is here to stay, but don't take my word for it. I do not work for Microsoft. When the Analytics window was loading, it flashed the Power BI icon. These are Power BI visualizations, none of which are populated right now, right? But these would be visualizations based on the usage of your app. We haven't distributed the app, nobody's using it, so nothing is going to be here right now. But these would be all different charts and choices that you can see in terms of analyzing the usage of your app. You also have 2 other categories here. In addition to usage, you have performance and location. And when your app is distributed and people are using it, you can always come back in here and look and see what's going on. So that's all of the information that you get when you're in the studio and you go to File, See All Versions. So this first hands-on segment that we did, we covered a lot of information. We created a Canvas app from scratch. We connected to an Excel Online for Business data source that was stored in a OneDrive account. We built our app, added a new screen, formatted field controls and screen controls and things of that nature. We got our next buttons to switch between different screens. We previewed our app. We played it, which opens in a new window tab. We went in and made changes to our source data and saw that the app reflected the changes. And we reviewed all of the information that you can get from See All versions. We can go back on the left side. We can just go back to the Power Apps home screen. In part 2 of this lesson, we're going to create another new Power App. This time, we're going to be creating a Canvas app from a SharePoint list. So this part will include how to view item screens, new item screens, edit item screens, and images. We're going to be starting this process from within SharePoint. And while we're in SharePoint, we're going to create 2 simple lists. And the result is that the app will allow you to populate one of those 2 lists. So the files that we're going to be used that are in the video description, there's an Asset Pictures folder and a Learnit logo file. If you could please get those files, that folder and that file, and save them to your desktop. And then navigate to your SharePoint and make sure you're in a directory that it will allow you to create a list. I'm now on my SharePoint site where I'm going to create 2 lists. And so in order to do that, on the left side, I'm going to go down to Site Contents and click on Site Contents. And it shows everything that's on the site so far. Up at the top, I'm going to click on the New drop-down and select List. So I'm going to create a list from blank. So right here I have blank list and I'm going to select that. We're going to name this list Repair Tech. And by the way, this is a topic switch. For this app, we won't be using that financials file. We're going to be creating 2 lists and then we'll use our app to populate one of the lists in SharePoint. So you can give a description that's optional, right? We'll just put list of repair techs. And we want it to show in site navigation so we have easy access to it. So you can go ahead and click on Create. Now this is not so much SharePoint training, so I'm going to just walk you through the steps to create the list that we want. We have the framework of the list created. It only gives you a title field, and we're going to want to add another field to this list. So where it says Add Column, we can do the drop-down arrow there. And we're going to add a column, and the type of column is single line of text. So we're going to select that. Now on the right side, and to create a column box, we're going to name this column Email. And normally we would use a hyperlink as the type of column for an email address. But because of the way that we're going to reference this column from our second list that we create, we're unable to do that. And I'll speak more about that when we get to the second list. We don't need to put a description. It gives us the type, single line of text. We don't want a default value or a calculated value. We can just go ahead and click on Save at the bottom. Now we're going to go ahead and populate this list with 2 entries. So up at the top, you're going to click on Edit in Grid View, and it changes the view. So this way you can put in more than 1 entry at a time. If you're not in Grid View, you'd have to add new entries independently. So in the first title, we're going to just give this person a name, and I'm just going to use generic Mickey Mouse. And then I use my tab key to go over to the email field, or you can click on it. And I'm just making up an email address of mickey@any.com. any.com and press enter. And I'm using my back arrow to get to the second title field. And we're going to populate that with Donald Duck. And Donald's email is donald@any.com. And we can press enter. Now we want to come up here and click on Exit Grid View. So we're seeing the new entries that we just put in our Repair Tech list. So now we're ready to create our second list. So we're going to go back on the left side. We're going to go back to Site Contents. Up at the top, we're going to click on New and List again. It's also a blank list. And this list we're going to name Asset. So we're going to name this list Assets. We don't need to put a description in. We'll leave the defaults here and we'll click Create. So this list is going to have two other columns in addition to the title column. So we're going to go ahead and set that up. We're going to add these two columns slightly differently. Well, actually, we can just add it the same way. So we're going to click right where it says Add Column. And the first column type that we're going to use is a choice column. So select choice off of the list. We're going to name this column Asset Type. And instead of people being able to just freeform and type in whatever they want, we're going to give them a list to select from. We don't have to put in a description. It shows our type is choice. And then where it says choices, we're going to edit. For choice 1, you can click on it and select it. And it's going to be desktop. Choice 2, we're going to edit. And that one is going to be laptop. And choice 3 is going to be mobile. For any kind of mobile device, either a phone or a tablet. We don't want to add any other choices. If we did, we could do this plus sign here, add choice. If we wanted to change the colors of the choices that we have or delete them, we have a paint palette and the delete this choice X on the right side of each choice. And we're not going to allow the users to add values manually. That means they can type in anything that they want. We're not going to give a default value. We're going to scroll down. We're not going to use a calculated value. You can expand more options. And when you expand more options, you can display the choices using a drop-down menu or radio button. Option buttons are what they're called now. We're going to select radio buttons. We're not going to require that the column contains information. We're not going to enforce unique values. We're good here, so we can save at the bottom. And we have another column that we're going to add here. So go ahead and click on your Add Column again. And the type of column that we want is not showing on this list, so we can go to the More option at the bottom. And that takes us into SharePoint settings where you can create a column. So, and it gives us more choices here. So the name of this column is going to be Repair Tech. And the type of information is going to be lookup. And it's looking up from information already on this site. So what we're going to do in this list is we're going to look up the Repair Tech's email addresses from the Repair Tech list. So we can continue to scroll down. We don't need a description. We're not requiring that it contains information. Where it says get information from, we're going to select the drop down, and you should see your Repair Tech list on the list. Select it. So then it refreshes your screen, and I scroll down again. So get information from Repair Tech in this column, access the drop-down and select email. Now, when we created the repair tech list, if we had made the email column a hyperlink column, it wouldn't show in this list. You can't look up to a hyperlink column. So that's why we made it a single line of text. And we can go down to the bottom and simply click OK. So now if you look at your site navigation on the left, you have your repair tech list, which we manually populated, and you have your assets list, which shows our columns, but we're not going to populate it from within SharePoint. We're actually going to change this into an app, and we'll use the app to populate this list. Since the assets list is the one that we're going to want to populate using our Power App, we want to make sure that that is the list that we're currently in. When you're on that list, right up here on the top, you can go to the ellipsis. You'll see Automate, and that's if you want to use Power Automate to create a workflow for it. And to the right of that, you will see More Actions, and you're going to choose Integrate. And when you hover over Integrate, you'll see both Power Apps and Power Automate and Power BI, pretty much the whole Power Platform that can be integrated with SharePoint at this point in time. So we're going to hover over Power Apps and we're going to select Create an App. The Create an App panel opens on the right-hand side. Build a custom app based on your SharePoint list. What can I do with Power Apps is a link for more information. We're going to name our app here to get started. And then Power Apps will open and we'll be able to customize the app. So we're going to name this app Populate SharePoint Assets List. And once you're done typing in the name, you can go ahead and click on the Create button at the bottom. You'll see that it's launching the Power Apps Canvas Studio. It's gathering all the information, saving to Power Apps. And once it's done, it shows you the app that it brought up. Let's take a look at Tree View so we can see what it created for us. We have 3 different screens here: Browse, Detail, and Edit screen. The Browse screen has some sort of gallery on it, right? We're seeing the separators, the next arrows, all of the things that we're familiar with. Also has a text search box. That's the search items box at the top. We have a detail screen, and right now we're not seeing anything because we haven't populated that list, right? So we're going to use this app ultimately to populate that assets list on SharePoint. And you also have an edit screen that is, just like it says, an editable screen that you can utilize in the app that it created based on what Power Apps analyzed was in your SharePoint list. It created this app for you. Let's take a look at the File tab. And we'll see that there's no need for us to save, as all the changes were automatically saved as it created the app. So what we're going to do now is go down to the bottom on the left side and go ahead and close this app. We're going to go to our apps screen on the left. And you'll see your Populate SharePoint Assets List app is showing at the top. And so we're going to play this app from the list. So go ahead to your More Commands button or click on the name link, and play the app. When we looked at the 3 different screens it created in the app, this is what is called the browse screen that it created. And in its title bar, you have a refresh icon so you can refresh the list. You have a sort icon, and you have a create new item icon. So we're going to go ahead and click on that create new item icon. And this opens what is called the edit screen, which we also saw in the studio with the 3 different screens for the app. So this is the edit screen here. This is the screen that we're going to be putting our data entry items on. We're going to add a total of 6 items to this list. So I'm going to go ahead and click in the title box, and I'm going to type Dell XPS 8940. That's the name of the asset. For the asset type, we have a drop-down arrow. We can select our choices, desktop. For our repair tech, when we do the drop-down, we'll see the 2 email addresses because that's the field that we created that used a lookup to the email address field in the repair tech table. And so for this one, we're going to assign it to Donald. We're not attaching anything. Up in the upper right-hand corner now, you have a check mark. If you hover over it, it says Submit Item. So now we're back on our browse screen, and you can actually see the item that we just typed in. If we click on View Item Details there, it just shows, and this screen is called the detail screen, where it's just showing the details of what you put in. So I'm going to use this back to list button up at the top, and then I'm going to do a plus sign. We have 5 more items that we're going to add to this list. So go ahead and click your plus sign. The second item that we're going to add is HP Pavilion. And the asset type is a desktop. We're also assigning it to Donald, and do your check mark. Back to the plus sign for our third one. This one is Dell Inspiron. And the asset type for this one is a laptop, and we're assigning it to Mickey. Go ahead and submit it. Going to do our plus sign again. We have the HP 17.3 inch. The asset type is a laptop, and it's also being assigned to Mickey. We have 2 more to go. So back to the plus sign. This one is going to be Surface Pro is the title. The asset type is mobile, and the repair tech for this one is Donald. And for our last entry, we're going to go ahead and do Samsung Galaxy. The asset type is mobile, and this one is going to be assigned to Mickey. So you've seen the screens, right? Again, this screen, the main screen, is the browse screen. So in the browse screen, click in that search items text box and start typing Dell. And what it will do is it will filter the list for you for the 2 Dell products that we put on there. I'm going to just backspace, and now you have your full list again. So if we click the View Item Details arrow on any of those, then that shows the details screen from in the studio when we looked at the 3 different screens. And then the screen we're on when we're putting in an item is the edit screen. And from this detail screen, you actually have the edit this item pencil up there, as well as delete this item trash can. If you click on the pencil icon, it takes you back into the edit screen. And you can just go ahead and resubmit and do your back to the list button. So we're able to populate the SharePoint list using this app. We're going to switch over to SharePoint and take a look and see if the list is populated. You may have to refresh your SharePoint browser tab, but you'll see that the list is populated with the entries that we put in via the app. So it's showing our asset types, the repair text, and the titles that we put in. Let's switch back over to the browser tab where we have our app, where we went ahead, the same tab where we inserted the items that are now showing on this SharePoint list. The folder Asset Pictures that you've put on your desktop is what we're going to be using here. We want to edit all of the items that we added and insert a picture, and we have the images in that folder. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the first item, the Dell Inspiron, and then I'm going to go to the Edit This Item pencil. So you'll notice at the bottom there's attachments, and it says there is nothing attached. You're going to go ahead and click on the paper clip that says Attach File and navigate to wherever you stored that Asset Pictures folder on your desktop. So when you get in there, you'll see images for all of these items. We're on Dell Inspiron, so we're going to go ahead and double click that file. And then we're going to do our check mark to submit the item. So we're doing an edit. We populated the original list, and then we're going back in and we're editing. Just remember, when you get back to the asset screen, do your back to list arrow so you can get to the next item. So we have appropriately named images in that folder. Take a few moments and attach the images for the rest of these items. So once you have that done, if you click on any item, right, and you go back into edit, you'll see that attachment. And if you're in the app online and you see the attachment, you can actually click on the attachment from within your app, and it's going to download the file. So any user of the app, it will give it the file download, and they can open the file and see the picture. I'm going to close that picture window, get rid of my downloads drop down, and submit this item again. And then I'm doing the back arrow just to get back to the list. And now you can close your app and return to your Power Apps interface. We're going to go back into the studio for the Populate SharePoint Assets list. So I'm going to go over and select Edit and wait for it to load. We're going to skip the splash screen. And now I'm going to show you how to insert images into the studio. So there's a couple of different ways we can do this. Let's go over to the left, and I'm going to collapse the browse screen in tree view, and I'm going to click on the detail screen. I'm going to go to the insert tab up top and then click on the media button, and the top choice is image. So it gives you the framework of an image, and I'm going to just drag that framework down on the screen, and you'll see some guidelines that appear on the screen when you're moving objects around. I'm using those to center it at the bottom of the screen. Now, this is where I use my properties screen. So over on the right where it says image none, you're going to do the drop down and choose add an image file. And navigate to wherever you saved the Learnit logo PNG file, and we're going to double click it. So now it places that image on this particular screen. Now, if we want to just take a preview, take a look at it, go ahead and click your preview the app icon or press F5 and you can see the image on that screen. So now we're going to close preview mode and let's select the image. And we want to give this image a light blue background color. So in the properties pane, I'm going to scroll down until I see color. Click the paint bucket. I'm going to give it a really light blue background, maybe even lighter than that. And now for a challenge, this particular app has 3 screens. Go ahead and assign a fill color to each of the 3 screens. On the left side of your screen, I'm going to have you go to Media View, and you'll see that the logo is showing there. We could have come here and uploaded the image here, and then if you hover over the logo there, when you go to the More Actions ellipsis, you have the choice to delete it or add it to your canvas, so whatever screen that you're on. If you delete it while it's on a screen, it will cause an error to show up on that screen. So I'm going to go back to Tree View and go back to the Detail screen so I can have that screen visible. I'm going to go back to Media and delete the logo. It's going to ask me to verify. I'm going to select Remove. So now you see that the name isn't valid. This identifier isn't recognized because the file doesn't exist in here anymore. So I'm going to just select the image framework, and I can go back over to the properties, and where it says none, I can add the image file again. And it shows there and in media. And it kept the shading from when we had it in here before as well. So now I'm going to have you save and close your file. And we're going to do another type of Canvas app in the next lesson that I'm going to set up for you. So for this one, you're going to save and close your file, and you'll be back in your apps list. Now you know the steps to add an image file to your Canvas Studio for a particular app. Unfortunately, there's a glitch right now where if you were to play the app, you won't see that image. It's a known issue and it's being worked on, but you have the steps. Now we're going to create another Canvas app, but this time we're going to start by using a built-in template. So over on the left, on your navigation pane, we're going to go ahead and click on Create. And when we get to the Create screen, we have our Start from Blank, Start from Data, and then the next section is Start from Template. If you want to take a moment to look through the different varieties of templates, you'll notice that some are for Canvas apps, some are model-driven, some are for portal apps. And it's quite a long list. So I scrolled back up to the top where it says Start from Template. And to the right, I'm going to click in the Search All Templates box and type Inventory. And 2 templates come up. One, Asset Checkout, is model-driven, and Inventory Management is Canvas app. We're going to go ahead and click on Inventory Management. And it automatically gives the app a name that is the name of the template followed by an underscore and 4 numbers. It gives you a preview of the template right here. This is an active preview. If you want to see how it works before you go into it, you can go click right here. So I'm going to click that preview, and it actually opens it up as if you're playing the app as opposed to previewing it. It will take a moment to load, But I'll point this out. You have 3 tabs going across the top. It's on the All tab. And then there's a Stock Low to High tab. I'm going to select that tab. So all of my low stock items are at the top, and I'd have to scroll down to see a sample of other items. Now, the thing about these templates is the Canvas apps templates, they are filled with dummy data. You don't have access to the data source or anything like that. The reason why they're out here is so you can look at the build and get ideas for what you might want to build in an app of your own. So while we're in here, let's click on the first low that we see and see if it lets us do it from this preview. And it ultimately does. It goes to the product details screen. So it lets me know that this is a low, it has low stock. It gives me the current stock and its ideal stock, and the difference between the two is the order quantity, and then the total of that order quantity. If I wanted to restock, I could click the restock button. So I'm going to go ahead and click that. It lets me know that the order was placed successfully. I can have an email sent to myself, or I can click on the home button to get back to the list. So that's kind of how that works. And now you'll see that youth accessory combo set has a good stock level now. It's no longer low. And we can go ahead and close this browser tab. It returns you to the inventory management window. So if you like the preview and you want to go ahead and create the app, you can go ahead and just click on create, and it will take you into the studio. Just a note about the splash screen here. This would be a preview of the app, so it wouldn't play it like it did when we were on the create this app from a template screen. So we're going to just skip this. And it's letting us know that it has preview features and then entering final validation. If you get that pop-up, you can read it if you like. I'm going to go ahead and open the app. It's going to take a moment to load all of the data. And in the meantime, in TreeView, you can see that it has 3 screens. If I wanted to build an inventory management app, I would be examining everything on each of these screens if I wanted it to be very similar to this one. And I would have to connect it to data that I have in a data source somewhere. So that's the point of these Canvas app templates. At this point, if you want to, I'm going to just go into preview to make it load the data, to force it to load the data. There it is. And then I can close preview. So if you want to save the app, go ahead and you can do file save and you can close it. Now that we've completed our section on Canvas apps, we're going to talk about the difference between sharing an app and publishing it. So when you share an app, you can share it with individuals, groups, or everyone in your organization. You can also optionally allow users to edit and share the app themselves. Typically, you would be doing this, like say you're collaborating on an app with someone. It would be perfect for you to share it with them, and then they can add their edits and stuff like that to it as well. When you're sharing an app and the share screens, which you'll see in a little while, they give you this information. But for example, if the app connects to an Excel online file, you need to share access to that file with the users as well so they can access the data source from within the app. You'll be prompted if the app is based on Dataverse tables to change the security level if necessary, so the app users will have access to those tables. So that's sharing. When it comes to publishing, you're kind of publishing your app every time you save it, but only to a limited amount of people. So whenever you are saving changes in your Canvas app, you're publishing those changes to yourself and anyone else who has permissions to edit the app, which you can grant them in the share screen. When you're finished making app changes, you have to publish them to make them available to everyone with whom the app is shared. So after the app is ready to go, you're ready to publish. And then if you continue editing the app, you'll have to republish. So the changes in the interim will go out to all users. So the other thing we're going to talk about right now is how you access an app. So after it's shared, after it's published, apps can be accessed via the browser. There is a mobile Power Apps app that is available for both Android and Apple devices. You can access an app from within SharePoint and as well as from within Power BI. So the last part of this course will be accessing an app from within Power BI. Let's go back to our app screen for Power Apps. On the apps screen, we're going to select the Populate SharePoint Assets List app. Actually, let's select the Financials app. We'll select that one. And then we're going to go to the More Commands button, and we're going to choose Share. So the Share screen opens, and it says it's shared with yourself because you're the owner of the app. At the top, it's telling you to add people as users and co-owners to your app. Make sure your data connections have been shared with all users. So again, if this app connects to an Excel Online file, that file would also need to be shared via Excel Online with the people that you're going to be sharing the app with. So go ahead and type in, it could be a name, an email address. If you have groups, you can type that in, a group address. Or if you want to share it with everyone in your organization, you can type the word everyone in this enter a name box. Go ahead and type something in there. And once you select that person or those persons, you'll notice that they're automatically selected. And when they're selected, this is where on the right side, you can make them a co-owner so they can use, edit, and share the app. They can't delete it or change the owner of the app. And then it's reminding you, make sure your users have access to the data used in your app, right? Including any gateways, APIs, connectors, and tables. So we used Excel Online for business and then to make sure that that file is shared with this user. And then at the bottom, you're going to just go ahead and click the purple share button. It will let you know that it's updating permissions and it will go through its process. So now it lets you know that all permission changes were saved successfully. I leave the default at the bottom to send an email invitation to new users so they know that this has been shared with them. And they'll be able to access the app as well. So I'm going to cancel that screen. Now I'm going to use the More Commands button for the Financials app again to go back into the studio. So I'm going to click on Edit there. When the splash screen comes up, we can skip it. So now that I shared the app, again, you can see up here that it's still unpublished. Let's say that all the changes for right now that we have done were great. We can publish them to all the users of the app, right? I made my person a co-owner, so they already have all the changes. But just imagine that we shared it with multiple people. Now the other people will get all the changes that have been made in the app once it's published. Remember, it's only your co-owner that gets the changes when you make changes and just save them. You're publishing those changes to yourself and any co-owners you may have. So we're going to go to the File tab. And since we had already saved the app, what would be the Save button is now Publish. And you saw the Publish button earlier. So you're going to go ahead and click your purple Publish button. So it's on the most recent version. It's letting you know that publishing will make this version available to everyone who has permissions to use the app. There's no description in this app. If we wanted to put a description in, we could edit the details. So let's go ahead and click on Edit Details. And for the description, I'm going to put Financial info based on country sales and country segments. Something like that is fine. I'm going to scroll to the bottom of the screen, and we kind of saw the screen before, we just never filled anything out on it. Right? There's nothing else we need to change. So now I am going to close the screen. And when I close the screen, it brings me back into the app, so I have to go back to File again. Adding a description is a change, and so that change needs to be saved. Go ahead and click your Save button. And now that it's saved, we'll get our Publish button again, so go ahead and Publish. And we can just go ahead and click on Publish this version now. You'll see our description is there. Once it's done publishing, it'll let you know that all changes are saved and published. If you want to share at this time, you can, right? If you haven't shared to those people already, if you've already shared to people, now everyone is getting the most recent version because you published it. And we can go ahead and close this app. There's so many other details about Canvas apps, but I think you've been given a good framework for beginning to create those apps and hopefully explore what you can do with them. Now we're going to switch our focus to creating a model-driven app. So model-driven apps take a data-first approach. They are less flexible than Canvas apps. With Canvas apps, you're basically given a blank canvas and you can kind of create whatever you want on it. Model-driven apps are different. Most of the components are pre-made and pre-selected based on the data you choose, although you can do some editing in a model-driven app as well. Model-driven apps are more sophisticated, which makes them better suited for apps that require complex business logic. They're also responsive by design, and they'll render themselves according to whatever device you use. With our Canvas apps, you can always view them in a web browser, but you have to tell it when you're building it whether to format it for phone or for tablet. In this lesson, we're going to be using tables from Microsoft Dataverse as our data source for our model-driven app. I'm going to go ahead and go to the Power Apps home screen at this time. The model-driven app that we're going to create from scratch is going to be a phone call log of sorts. But before we do that, I want to show you some of the Dataverse tables that you have access to. So from the navigation screen on the left, we're going to go ahead underneath data. If you need to expand it, we're going to select tables. And the list that will pop up are all of the tables that are in the Microsoft Dataverse. It lets you know whether the table is customizable, the type of table it is, so on and so forth, right? The name of the table. Each of them has a More Actions button where you can, if it's customizable, you have the ability to go in and edit. For data, you can edit data for the table in Excel or get data to bring into the table from Excel. You have an Azure Synapse link and an artificial intelligence builder that you can do for every table. The other thing that you have access to from here are choices under data, and that's also from the Dataverse. So you have all different kinds of like approval stage, different steps in processes, different choices like a yes or no Boolean or a category, all different kinds of things that you have access to in the Dataverse. What we can do is on the left-hand side, we're going to go ahead and click on Create, and we're going to select Model Driven App from blank. And we have two types of experiences now. The classic app designer, which we're going to use. The modern app designer is still in preview mode. And remember, features that are in preview mode can ultimately end up disappearing. That's generally speaking. This one will probably stay, but we're going to stick with the classic app designer. And down at the bottom, you're going to go ahead and click your purple Create button. On the Create a New App screen, it's letting you know that the name is required. And we'll just call this call log. And notice it also provides a unique name with what's known as a publisher prefix. We don't have to change anything there. We will put in the description field a call log for business calls. So then we have a icon image, right? It also has a unified interface URL that you can copy here. You can use an existing solution to create the app. You can choose a welcome page for the app. You can enable the app in mobile offline mode. We're not going to check any of those boxes. We're going to just click Done in the upper right-hand corner. So now you're in the app designer. This is what you work in when you're working on model-driven apps, the app designer. With Canvas apps, it's the Power App Studio. This is a different interface here. So starting at the top, right, it lets you know you're in the app designer and it gives the name of your app. And if I click on the name of the app up there, I can get to the name and I can change it if I want to. This panel opens up on the right with every choice that we had on the Create the App screen. And then it also has at the Properties tab, it has a Components tab here, which we don't have to worry about at this point. So what we're going to do is look at the other buttons over here. You have a Save button that's inactive now. You have Save and Close. You have a Validate button. So that's kind of like the app checker. It will check your app for you to see if you have any missing components. And it has a Publish button, which allows you to publish your app to make it available to all the roles that have been given access to it. And then you also have a not accessible right in this moment Play button, so you can see how the app works. You have a Add, Edit, and Remove button above your working screen. Also Search Canvas and Help. So on your screen, what pops up is the first thing, and it has a red warning symbol, is your sitemap. And it lets you know that the configuration is missing. Before you can do anything else in here, you have to configure your sitemap. And that's where we're going to start. Before we begin configuring our sitemap for our phone call tracking log, we are going to learn about the three areas here. So there's three different sections when you're configuring a sitemap. There's the area, which you can think of like a department. In our example, we're going to use back office for our area. It could also be something like sales. You can have multiple areas in a model-driven app, and you can toggle between them to access different groups. The next component of your sitemap is the group. That allows you to group tables, custom pages, and other components in a logical fashion. If we're talking about a sales area, it may have a customers group. In our example, our group is going to be phone logs. So our area is going to be back office. Our group is going to be phone logs. The last component for configuring your sitemap is the sub area. So these would be related categories under group. For example, for a sales area, a sub area might be leads and or opportunities. We're going to access Dataverse tables for our sub area. So when you're configuring your sitemap, you're basically telling the app which tables to pull from the Dataverse. So we're going to start with our sitemap here, and we're going to click the pencil icon to the right of it to open the sitemap designer. So now you'll see the three components. We have new area. Again, that's like a department. A new group, which allows you to group components in a logical fashion. And a new sub area, which is for related categories under those groups. So we're going to start with the new area. When I hover over it here, I get the pencil icon, and I'm going to edit the title. I can also type in the title over here. So notice over here you have your properties panel, and it shows the components. So the area title for ours is going to be back office. You have the ability to select an icon. We're not going to select an icon. And notice the ID has a red asterisk next to it, and it just says new underscore area. Over here, now instead of saying new area, it says back office. So now we're going to create a new group. So we're going to click on new group here. We can click on the edit icon. And the same thing, you can either edit the name right there. I'm going to backspace new group out of there. And we're going to call it phone call logs. And it updates here, and it does over on the right side. And we're going to actually have two sub areas. And so when you click on new sub area, you get different properties over here on the right. So for sub area, it's not just a matter of naming it. You have to start by selecting a type. So when we do the type, we're going to select entity. So you can select dashboard, web resource, or a URL. Entity means a table. It means a Dataverse table. So we're going to select an entity, and then we have to tell it which table we want. We changed the type to entity. Now we need to tell it which one. So entity is required. We're going to do the drop down, and the table we want is the account table. We're not putting in a URL or anything like that. So now if you look over on the left, you have back office, phone call logs, and accounts. Now, we want to add another sub area, all right? And we can leave this one in called accounts, that's fine. And we're going to add another one. So to add another sub area, you need to have your group selected or your current sub area, and then you can do the add button up here, add a component. And we're going to choose sub area. So we get the same type of screen on the right. We're going to select the type. It's going to be an entity. This time for the entity, let's see, we want to grab the phone calls table from the entity is required list. So I'm going to start typing phone PH, and it brings the table up so I don't have to scroll. So we have on the left, we have back office as our area. We have phone call logs as our group, and we have accounts and phone calls as our sub areas. And we want to change what the phone calls is going to be called. So with it still selected, we're going to change the name of it. We can come over to properties and use the title field. And we're going to call it phone tracking logs, something like that. Just to change the name, show you that you can do that. So now we have our sitemap created. That's what we needed to do. We needed to create our sitemap. And now we're going to have the ability to save what we have, right? So let's go ahead and click on Save to save our changes up here. And now it's saved, right? Save is no longer active for us. So we're going to end up publishing it. So let's go ahead and click on Publish the Sitemap. It lets you know every step it's taking along the way. So anyone that has access can have use of it. So what we're going to do now is save and close it. Now that we've configured our sitemap and we're back in the app designer, we can do further modifications to our app. So you'll notice the sitemap no longer has the red warning. It's been configured. It's showing that it has all dashboards, all business process flows. And underneath that, you have an entity view area, which was already expanded when we came back in here. And it has the number 2 next to it. Those are the number of tables that we selected from the Dataverse. So we have our account table, we have our phone call table, and by default, they're able to see, end users would be able to see all of the forms for the account table, all of the views, all of the charts, all of the dashboards, and the same for the phone call table. We want to modify this. For the account table, we only want them to be able to see 2 views. So I'm going to click on the Views All button to the right of account. And over here, it opens up where you can select the views that you want. So you have to have one view checked at all times. If you uncheck all, it's going to leave the top view checked. So we want them to have 2 views, active accounts and inactive accounts. I'm going to check both of those and uncheck the top one. Now notice next to the account entity, it says 2 next to views. For the phone call, we only want them to have access to 2 forms. So I'm going to click on Forms All to the right of Phone Call. I'm going to uncheck All. And we want them to have access to the phone call form. And I'm going to go ahead and uncheck the top one. And also, if we scroll down under Quick Create Forms, we want the phone call Quick Create form. And again, under Entity View, you'll see that Forms updated to the number 2 next to our phone call entity. So now that we've done that, and we'll say those are our final edits for this app, we're going to go ahead and save. We're going to republish the app. And now we have access to the play button so we can check out how it works. Go ahead and play your app. So when you go into playing your app and you're seeing it in this view, you can expand that sitemap or navigation panel on the left if you'd like. And you'll see that it's on the accounts table, the first entity, right? In alphabetical order. So we said that we only wanted them to see 2 views for accounts. It's showing active accounts. And if you do the drop down there, you can only get to inactive accounts. Those are the 2 views we allowed. Switch it back to active accounts. Now you'll notice across the top, you have a series of icons. You can show a chart. I only have one account in here, accounts by industry. I'm going to close the chart. You may be working with a Dataverse table. Your account table could already be populated. It could be blank. I just have one account in this table, and we're going to add an account. So that's what the new button is for. If we wanted to delete, we could. to refresh because it is in a web browser. Email a link, we have that option. We can add a Power Automate workflow to this, and we could run reports. So we're going to add an account, and we're going to just click the new button up top. And we're not going to fill out all the information for the account. There are 3 different tabs of information that you can put in. So what we must put in, the only required field, is the account name. And I'm going to call this, let's just see, any company, comma, Inc. For a phone number, I'm going to just put in all 5s. My default go-to. You can see the other fields: a fax number, a website, a parent account if this is a child account, the ticker symbol you can put in, a bunch of address fields. If it's enabled, you can get directions for the address fields. You can put in the primary contact. You can look for that person. It's a lookup. You also have a details tab where you can go more into the company profile, a description, contact preferences, billing, shipping, any child accounts. And you have a scheduling tab which shows the latitude and longitude. We can go back to summary. We don't have to put anything else in here in order for our example to work. We just have to have an account. And so up at the top, we're going to go ahead and click Save and Close this account. So it shows in our list of active accounts. Now the thing is, down at the bottom, once you have a lot of accounts in this table, you can search for them by using the first letter of the account. So if down here, if I click on the T, it will show me only the records that begin with the letter T. When I go back to the letter A, it's showing me just any company, and the default choice is all down there. So now that we have an account, we're going to switch over on the left side to our phone tracking logs. And so now, again, at the top, you can show a chart, you can set up a task, email, appointment, phone call, letter, fax, other activities, booking alerts, right? You don't have a new button up here, but let's say that we just had a conversation with someone from any company and we need to log that information. We're going to use the phone call button up at the top right now. And so we get this form. We have more required fields. The call from will be populated by yourself. The subject, we can just put follow up for product development, something like that. Who did I call? I'm going to click in call to, and it will show me my company names, my account names. If I have a lot, I can start typing it in and it will find that one. I'm going to just click on any company, Inc. The phone number I called, I'm going to do all 7s this time. You know, their corporate number is in the record. The direction, you can change it from outgoing to incoming. So I called this person. As I scroll down, I can put in a description. There is a regarding, right? So if I had a call with this particular account regarding another account, I could choose that account from the list. But for the description, we're just going to say product development meeting will be in early January 2022, something like that. And the duration of the call, I'm going to just choose 15 minutes from the drop down. Now, at the top over on the right, you see the normal priority, right? We didn't put a due date in. We have an open status. And then it has your name as the owner, and there's a drop down for more header fields. So if I want to put a due date in here, I can get to it from there. If I want to change the priority, I can get to it from there. If I want to change the status, right? That's not quite how you change the status. Not from there. You would use mark complete up here. And then the owner. So I'm not going to put a due date on it or anything. I'll leave it as normal. And I'm going to just go up to the top and save and close. So now it's showing in the list of all my phone calls. If I had put a due date, then I could filter by those that are overdue or those that are due with any of these time frames. So there's quite a bit that you can do using a model-driven app, but the first step is always going to be configuring your sitemap. I've just switched back to my accounts table, and I just want to go over a few other things on the navigation pane. You have recent here. So anything recent will show up here. So here's my Any Company Inc. that was recently added, right? Until it's no more room. And you also have the ability to pin items on your recent list to be able to find them quickly. We can go ahead and exit this phone calls app. Our last lesson in this course is adding a Power App to Power BI. So this is a bonus lesson in the course. If you do not have Power BI, it may be of interest to you. If you do have Power BI, you'll be able to follow along. So just to get grounded in this, Microsoft Power BI is the leader in business intelligence software. It can connect to hundreds of data sources. It's used to model data, create reports, and ultimately, these reports can be added to interactive dashboards that can be shared with users. Power Apps can be added to the report pages. So Power BI has two components, the Power BI desktop application and the Power BI service, which resides in the cloud. When you have one, you have the other. We will be using both components in this lesson, as well as the financial sample Excel file we've uploaded to OneDrive. So if you can go to your OneDrive folder where that financial sample file is, that's where we're going to be starting. When you're working in Power BI Desktop, the connector that you use to bring in an Excel file will direct you to a locally saved Excel file on your system. In order to use an Excel file that's online and stored in OneDrive or in a SharePoint document library somewhere, you would need to get the full path to that file where it actually resides in OneDrive. Now, when you're in OneDrive, what you can't do is you can't use this copy link up here. That's not what that is for. That's if you want to give people access to the selected file. We need to get the path to it. So in order to do that, we have to open it in Excel Desktop. And we're going to be using this financial sample file that we used earlier. So to the right of it, we're going to click its Show Actions button. And to the right of Open, you're going to click the arrow. Instead of opening it in the browser, which it will open in Excel Online, we're going to choose Open an App, and it's going to open your Excel desktop application. Go ahead and click Open an App. So now that the file is open in the desktop app, you're going to click on the File tab of the ribbon, and you're going to click on Info on the left-hand side. When you're on the Info tab, you'll see the name of the file, your OneDrive, your environment, whatever folder it's stored in, and right underneath that, you have the Copy Path button. You're going to go ahead and click on that button. You won't see anything happening, but it actually copied the path. Now, we're going to use that in Power BI Desktop. So I'm going to switch over. You can go to your apps and look for it, but you want to open Power BI Desktop. So if your splash screen opened when you launch Power BI Desktop, I'm going to go to its upper right-hand corner and close that. And you want to verify up here if you're logged into Power BI. If you're not, this would be a good time to do the drop down and sign yourself in. And once you're signed in, it will update, to show your name and everything up in that area. Now, this is not Power BI training, but you're going to need to be signed in order to be able to publish this to the service, as you'll see as we go through the lesson. So go ahead and get yourself signed in. Now that you're signed into Power BI, we're going to go up to the Home tab of the ribbon, and we're going to click on the upper half of the Get Data button. And it's going to open the Get Data screen, and it will have all of the different data sources that you can use in Power BI listed. They're categorized on the left. Now, the thing is that if we do Excel workbook, like I mentioned, it's going to find a workbook that is stored locally on your system. We have to use the web connector here. So on the left side, I'm going to go to Other, and the top choice is Web. And I'm going to select that, and then I'm going to choose Connect. So it wants the URL from the web. This is where we're going to paste in. I'm doing Control V as in Victor, and I'm going to paste in that path that we copied. And the only thing you have to do here, if you look at the very right side of the path, after it says financial %20 sample.xlsx, you have a question mark, web equals 1. This will not work unless you go in and delete the question mark and everything that comes after it. So you're going to delete the question mark, web equals 1 from the end of the URL. And then you're going to go ahead and click OK. So it let you know that it was connecting, and it opened up the navigator window where it's showing you all of the items that are in that Excel file. So you'll notice two different icons, right? We have both tables and sheets in that Excel file. We have the Excel table structure in there. It's not showing pivot tables in here. It's just showing the tables, and those are the icon that have the blue border going across the top. And then it's showing the sheet tabs, which do not have a blue icon growing across the top. So what we want to bring in is we want to bring in the information from all three of the tables. As I check each table, you can see a preview of the data on the right side. So we're going to check the three tables. And down in the bottom right, we're going to click on Load. It lets you know that it's loading. You'll get there are pending changes in your queries that haven't been applied in a yellow band growing across the top. And when it's done loading your data, you'll know that it's done when you look all the way over to the right, and in your Fields pane, you'll see those three tables. And if you expand those tables, you'll see the fields that are in the tables. So expand the financials table here. And again, this is not Power BI training, because I'd be giving you a lot more detail. The focus of this course is Power Apps. So we're going to walk through building a quick report. You're already in report view. This is a blank report page that you're on here. And what we're going to do is in the visualizations pane, and if your pane is collapsed, you can expand it. In the visualizations pane, we're going to go ahead and click on the first visualization type. It's a stacked bar chart. And it just puts the framework of the chart on your canvas. And so what we're going to do with that is I'm going to expand the width of the chart, just so kind of is about that wide on the canvas. And in the fields pane, I'm going to check the country field. I am going to check the sales field. And I'm also going to check the units sold field. So your visualization is built. If you hover over any of the bars in the chart, you'll see the country and the sales in the tooltip. And you're also seeing a legend down here. If you hover over the darker blue part of the bar at the right end of it, that's showing your units sold in the tooltip. So we have a basic report page. We'll just go down and double click the page tab. It's similar to an Excel workbook tab. We're going to double click it and we're going to name it Sales and Units by Country. And press enter. So now let's save our desktop file. You're going to want to save it wherever you save the other files for this course. So we can simply go all the way up to the upper left-hand corner and click on that save icon. So I'm in my directory and I'm going to just name the file Financial Sample and save it. So it updates the title bar. Now you're seeing the name of the file. So now the second part of this step is going to be publishing the file to the service. And we're going to get into that next. To publish your report to the service, it's going to publish a couple of things. It's going to publish the data set and the report. We can do that from the end of the Home tab of the ribbon. So the last icon on the Home tab is Publish. Go ahead and click it. If you haven't saved changes, or sometimes even if you have, it may prompt you to save your changes. So go ahead and click Save if it does that. And now you have your Publish to Power BI screen where it's showing all of your workspaces. If you only have My Workspace, you can use that one or choose another one to your liking. I'm going to select my Power Apps workspace and click on the Select button. So now it lets you know that it's publishing the Power BI to the online service, and it will let you know when it's done with the publish. So just that quickly, this is not a really large data set. It gives me the green check mark and success. What's cool about this is I can get to the service and open that file in the service right from this link. By the way, the .pbix is the Power BI desktop file extension. So I'm going to go up to the service by clicking Open Financial Sample in Power BI. When it opens in the service, it's already in report view. So you're looking at your report that you created. And this is where we need to add the Power Apps connector to our report page. So in order to do that, we're going to use this menu bar up top and go to More Options Ellipsis and put it in edit mode by clicking Edit. So when your report in the service is in edit mode, it looks just like report view in Power BI desktop. We want to make sure that we don't have the sales and units sold by country chart selected. We just want to be able to access a blank area of the canvas. If you have any confusion about whether it's selected, if I select it, it will have sizing arrows around it. To deselect it, I click on a blank area of the canvas. And what we're going to do is we're going to add the Power Apps connector to our report page. So in your visualizations pane, I'm going to draw an arrow pointing out the Power Apps connector. You'll see the Power Apps connector. It is considered a visualization in Power BI. So what we're going to do is we're going to just click on that connector, and it brings up the framework of your Power App. So what you're going to do is this. With that framework selected, notice in your visualizations pane, it now says Power Apps Data and then add data fields here. So in your fields pane, we're going to expand financials. And what you're going to do is you're going to put a check mark in front of country. You're going to put a check mark in front of sales and a check mark in front of units sold. Go ahead and do that. Country, sales, and units sold. Once you select fields, it will detect your environment. And again, mine is shaded for privacy here in the upper left-hand corner of the Power Apps visualization. And it tells you in that visualization to choose an existing app or create a new one. We're going to click on Choose App. When you do that, you'll see a list of your apps, and you're going to click on the Financials app. And then you're going to use the purple Add button in the lower right-hand corner of the Power Apps visualization. Now, in the background, you can see part of the app that's populated. We worked with this app earlier. And it's telling you, save your app in Power Apps Studio to finalize the data connection. So we're going to use the purple button to go to the Power Apps Studio. And it's doing its usual that we've seen before, getting things ready, loading. And we get our usual splash screen, which we can just skip. And now it's just saying we had to come here to save and close it, so it will complete the connection. So go ahead and go to File tab. So when you clicked on the File tab, you'll see there is no save. There's no need to save it. It already says Share. So you don't need to save it. You just need it to access it. So you can close it from the File tab. And when I switch back over to my Power BI workspace in the service, I'm still on my report page, and you see the Power App as part of your report page. Now we need to save our changes to this report. So you can go up to the upper left corner right underneath Power BI, and you'll see the file drop down, and you're going to choose Save this report. So it lets you know the report has been saved here. So now that it's saved, it says share this app from Power Apps so others can view it in Power BI. To do so, select More Options, Edit, and then in Power Apps Studio, select File Share. So if you haven't shared it with people in Power Apps, even if they have access to this report, they won't be able to see the Power App. So we're going to go ahead and add this report to a dashboard. And I can just do the X button to get rid of that little message there. And right up here, almost all the way to the right, underneath the search box, you're going to click Pin to a Dashboard. So in Power BI, you take your report pages and you pin them to dashboards. We're going to create a new dashboard, and we're going to call it Financial Sample. And we're going to click the Pin Live button, the yellow Pin Live button. So if you get to the splash screen quick enough, you can go to the dashboard from there. If it disappears, on the left-hand side of your screen, the lower icon will be whatever workspace you're in, right? So I'm going to navigate to my Power Apps workspace. Another way to get there is for me to go up here. It's a link. So you have two ways of getting to your workspace. Once you get to your workspace, you'll see that you have a dashboard, you have the report, which we just edited, and it also published the data set when it uploaded it. So we can click on Financial Sample, the dashboard, and you can see your regular bar chart that's on there. And then we have our Power App, and it's live. So we can actually use the app from a Power BI dashboard. Sorry, I get excited about this because I'm really a Power Platform person. And we can click on View Details next to Canada. It goes to the next screen. That screen will take you back to the home screen. So that is how you can integrate a Power App onto a Power BI report page in turn onto a Power BI dashboard. You can actually go ahead and get out of Power BI now if you like, and you can go back over and get out of the desktop as well. So in conclusion, we covered a lot in this course. We started with Canvas apps. We actually started with an explanation of what Power Apps are, who uses them, and the 3 types of apps that can be created. We initially worked with our Canvas apps. We learned how to build an app from scratch using an Excel online file. We changed the layout of the data source, renamed screens and components, added a new screen, applied formatting to screens, and formatted a screen control for navigation. Ultimately, we added an image file to the Canvas App Studio. We then created 2 SharePoint lists, one of which we populated. We then created a Canvas app from within a SharePoint list that allowed us to populate the other list. We added images to the app while playing it in the browser. We moved on and created another Canvas app, this time based on a template. That was our inventory management one. And again, we used the templates to gain our ideas on how to create our own apps. We covered the difference between sharing and publishing an app and how an app can be accessed. After that, we moved on and we had done everything we needed to do with our Canvas apps. So we went into model-driven apps. We started with an explanation of what model-driven apps are and how they differ from Canvas apps. We created a model-driven app from scratch. We configured its sitemap, including tables from the Dataverse. We then customized the app by limiting views and forms that end users could access. We saved and published the app before playing it. We added an account record and a phone call log entry during playback. And we viewed how that data is stored in the tables. And then we moved on from our model-driven apps, and we ended with our integration with Power BI. So we got an overview of Power BI before connecting Excel online data within the Power BI desktop. We created a basic report in the desktop, and we published it to the Power BI service. We edited our report to include the Power Apps visualization and connect it to our existing financials app. And then we created a basic dashboard in Power BI to see the Power App at work. Thank you very much for attending this video course.